In this episode of Vintage Audio Review, I'm going to talk about an A/B listening test that was performed this past weekend here in beautiful Tucson, Arizona, and that would have been on February 1st, 2025. It was attended by about 25 people, half from the Phoenix area and half from the Tucson area. What I had told people was that my good buddy Ian, who is a regular contributor to this channel, had provided me with two vintage receivers from the 70s. And you'll find out a little bit more a little later on about what actually was being tested. Now, it was a nice event at my good buddy's Richard house, who has hosted several A/B tests, and you can see some of those on my channel, of course. Now, this particular one was done in a room with only one person in at a time. The speakers that were used were the JBL 250 Ti's, which I did a review on a little while ago. Richard did have that defective subwoofer sent out to be repaired by a place in, I believe it was in Tampa, Florida, and he got it back and I put it in and it sounded really good. So we used the JBL 250 Ti's for the test. I thought it was appropriate for two vintage receivers. I will actually go over what people were listening, but nobody knew what was indeed being tested. And I didn't even know what I had hooked up until the very end. So what I'm going to do is kind of describe the setup a little bit, and then I will give the listeners' responses, how people voted. So there'll be like a PowerPoint showing the 5 questions that people were asked to fill out. And then I will show what the two devices were that were being A/B'd. So that's kind of the scope of this video. And when all that is finished, I'll come back and just kind of give you my little summary. I wanted to give a bit of an idea as to the setup of the A/B listening test that was conducted. Obviously, we have our two JBL 250 Ti loudspeakers right there. Here is our switch box, and it is remote controlled, so the output of each of the amplifying devices goes into here, and then they're switched to go to the two speakers. It has a little USB power pack for it, and this little guy right here is the Hi-Fi Walker H20 Pro digital audio player, and then all the two pieces of gear are underneath this table here. Here is another view of the setup used for the listening room. Here is the switch box and the power supply for it, and the little DAP music player there. And this actually is the remote control for this guy. People sat right here in the center. I'm guessing that the speakers were about 7 feet away from where this couch is, and the two speakers are about 6 or 7 feet apart. So now let's go over the data for the A/B listening test. In this case, B and C are the same as A and B. It's just the switch box shows the options as B or C. So the first question, whose bass low frequency response did you prefer more? More people preferred C, but it's not like they're 70 or 80% choosing C. It's just higher than B, and about the same, is almost as large a response as B. The next question, whose mid-range vocals did you prefer more? Once again, we see that the majority of people preferred C, but once again, it's not greater than 70%, and it looks like the about the same option had a higher choice than B. 3, whose frequency response did you prefer more? Definitely people preferred C more, but once again, it's not like it's 70% or just everybody thought it was C, but C does seem to be the preference for the high frequency response. And actually, it's not a lot different than about the same. 4, whose soundstage imaging did you prefer more? Once again, C is leading the way, but it's not an overwhelming majority. And about the same scored pretty well too. Finally, whose overall sound did you prefer more? More than half of the participants preferred C, and B was pretty close to about the same in this case. So overall, it seems like C was the winner, but it's only about 50% of the participants picked C. So that's kind of like a coin flip. It's not that there was a majority of people that just lined up to choose C. And there were some comments where people liked certain music tracks more with B than C. There was little bit of that going down, in which case I move them to about the same. Underneath that table with the blanket on it are the two items that were under test. The guy on the right is the Yamaha CR1020 receiver from around 1978-1979. It weighs about 41 pounds and is rated at 70 watts of channel into 8 ohms. And on the left is the Ayima A08 Pro integrated amplifier. It puts out maybe not quite 50 watts into 8 ohms, and it weighs about 3 pounds with its power supply, which is down below on the floor. And this guy does have the capability to tune in a Bluetooth signal. So, which is B and which is C? Well, here's C and here's B. I thought I would show how everything was interconnected for this A/B test. And we'll start with the Hi-Fi Walker H20 Pro DAP, which is on top of this table here. And that has an 1/8 inch stereo jack, which a 4-foot cable was plugged into, which had RCA outputs on the other end. You can just see one of them right here. And so what happens is that RCA output is then put into a coupler to connect to this Y adapter here. And that Y adapter would then split out, say if we're on the left channel, I believe it's white, so that would have been the left channel. So the left channel was then run through cables going to the A08 Pro left channel and the Yamaha CR1020 left channel there. The right channel, which you don't see, also has another Y adapter, and it would go to the right channel of each of these guys. So that's kind of how the inputs were connected to them. And as far as the outputs, we have these push terminal speaker wires here. So they're the push terminal tip jack kind of ends. They have a slight angle to them. And they would plug into here for the CR1020. And then they went on up to the switch box, which you saw at the top. And likewise for the A08 Pro, which has 3-way binding posts. But in this case, I used the tip jack ends and just put them into the hole on each of the binding posts. And then they went up to the switch box at the top. The power supply for the A08 Pro is this guy right here. I had mentioned that one of the receivers that was originally going to be used in this test, the Onkyo 4500, had too much variation in its frequency response. I just kind of wanted to show its frequency response. And it had changed since the first time I measured it and from when the video was done. And right before the event was going to take place, I measured it, and this variation, which is a dB almost for the right channel, is just kind of too much to have for an A/B test. I put together some performance data to compare the A08 Pro with the CR1020, and let's start with the crosstalk. The A08 Pro is here, and then the lower one is the CR1020. This is with the active channel putting out about 5 watts into 8 ohm loads. You can see that the A08 Pro has better than 70 dB of crosstalk. The Yamaha has better than maybe, 46 dB of crosstalk. This next plot shows the damping factors of the two devices. The A08 Pro is right here, and you can see it's above 60. And then when we get to 10 kilohertz, it drops down to 20. And at 20 kilohertz, it's about 6. Looks like a tube amp. The CR1020, on the other hand, is basically anywhere from about 20 to 30 and stays better than 20 across the band at 20 kilohertz. These plots are for the two frequency responses. The A08 Pro is this guy right here, and the CR1020 is this guy right here, and it's from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. You can see they're both within plus or minus half a dB, and the channels are balanced to within 0.4 of a dB for the A08 Pro, and they're a bit tighter balanced with the Yamaha CR1020, probably within 0.2 of a dB. And here's the standard THD SNR plot at 1 kilohertz for both of these guys, putting out about 5 watts into 8 ohms. The top guy right here is the A08 Pro. You can see its distortion is pretty good. The Yamaha is slightly better, but we're talking 0.002% versus 0.004%, so not really a big a deal. They both have SNRs in the 80 dB range, and they're both set for 25 dB of gain. I thought I should show a comparison of the harmonics of the A08 Pro and the CR1020, and in this case they're both putting out about 5 watts into 8 ohm loads, and they're both set for 25 dB of gain. The even or second harmonic is higher than the odd or third harmonic for the A08 Pro, and that seems to be the case as well for the CR1020. The even or second harmonics are higher than the odd or third harmonics as well. Once again, I started off with the Onkyo TX4500 versus the Yamaha CR1020 comparison in mind, and the only other person who knew that was Ian, who brought over both receivers earlier in the week. And when I hooked him up to the Quantasylum QA403 analyzer, I discovered that the frequency response of the Onkyo just was too far off. It had changed since I had measured it several months ago, and I wasn't able to tweak in the response to be close enough to the Yamaha's response to want to use it. So I set that aside and I started going through my stuff, and ultimately the Yamaha A08 Pro seemed to be the closest to the Yamaha, and I figured, you know what, let's just put the little Class D amp up against the much bigger Yamaha. Now, which would I rather own? I think I would rather own the Yamaha, but the A08 Pro could work well for some other people, and it does work via Bluetooth as well, although I've never tried that function. So overall, you know, I thought it was a fun event. The people all enjoyed it. I mean, we had beer and wine and water and you know, cookies and pizza and dip and chips. So it was a fun event. Everybody enjoyed it. You get to meet new people. I've noticed a lot of audiophiles carry pictures of their systems rather than, you know, pictures of their grandkids or kids or something. It's pictures of their amplifier or their speakers or something, so that's always kind of fun. Anyway, it's just a good get-together. People got to meet other people and maybe make some connections, you know, for future things. So I will have another event, you know, later down the line. I have an idea of what will be tested, but I won't let anybody know till after it happens. And anyway, it's kind of a fun thing. I mean, the cables, the interconnects, all that were pretty much the same. The switch box works really well that I have. And the big thing that I tell people is not to move your head when you're pressing the remote between B and C. And you can hear the switch box switch a little bit when that happens. And I mean, just a little relay click. So the big thing was not to move your head, because just moving your head a little bit can affect the sound difference. And the nice thing about a test like this, if there's a big difference between things, you'll hear it, you know, immediately. And there was 7 different tracks of music that people could listen to throughout the test. So kind of spread the wealth as far as the type of music. And it was just a fun get-together. I hope that you guys got a little bit out of it, kind of just watching it. If you lived in Tucson and you wanted to go, you can always email me, and we'll see if we can get you invited to the next event. And once again, I'd like to see your comments on the video. If you liked the video, you know, always a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed, it would be nice if you subscribe to the channel to help it grow and keep me off the streets at night. So that's kind of it for this episode of Vintage Audio Review. And until next time, I hope you have a great day or night.